Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. I let my neighbour know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbours. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbours? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offence. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him. But it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbours. I like this poem. It describes behaviour. It's Mending Wall by Robert Frost. I think what interests me the most about this poem is the fact that it's been used by both sides of the same argument. It's about two neighbours who are mending a wall. But it's huge. It's a poem that says good fences make good neighbours. And it's a poem that says, why is there even a wall here at all? It's both. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Kieran, and I am sat at home. My house is in Birchwood, which is just a little place 10 minutes outside of Lincoln in the UK. I would like to think of you all here with me in this room. I'm sat upstairs in a little box room with 4 grey walls surrounding me. And this is a show about walls. What are walls? What are they for? This is a wall. This is my garden wall. This is my neighbour's wall. This is a fallen wall. We all know what a wall is. A structure made out of wood or metal, concrete or Lego. Or as the dictionary definition defines, a continuous vertical brick or stone, metal or Lego structure that encloses or divides an area of land. Or a thing regarded as a restrictive or protective barrier. Walls can separate. Walls can protect. If there were no walls, then I would not have a house. If there were no walls, then it would be like going back to the Dark Ages. If there were no walls, then I wouldn't have anywhere to hang my pictures up. If there were no walls, then I would feel a new sense of danger. If there were no walls, then there wouldn't be any zoos. If there were no walls, then we wouldn't feel the need to keep animals caged up. If there were no walls, then we wouldn't feel the need to keep people caged up. If there were no walls, then all of the criminals in the world would be released. If there were no walls, then Banksy would be out of a job. If there were no walls, then what would be the point of builders? This isn't a direct call to arms, but maybe it should be. This is something that I have been struggling to get to grips with for a long time, and I cannot seem to make the pieces fit like a good foundation, like a wall. Did you used to play with Lego as a kid? I used to own thousands of pieces of Lego. I used to build these mega structures like castles and spaceships and stage sieges between them. I used to build little cities out of Lego and pretend that I was a god. Lego was always solitary for me. I can't remember playing with Lego with anyone else. I'd like to think you are all in here with me now, though. That'll be nice, wouldn't it? All of us together in the same room again. I mean, it might be cramped, but we'd make it work. Walls can enclose safe spaces, but they can also be used for protection. I've always been interested in history, stuff that's happened in the past. Let's go back in time. Not too far, just about 15 years back to the early 2000s. And imagine that I am less tall than I am. And I'm fresh-faced, without the beard. Imagine I'm timid. And I've got this brown rucksack on. I'm in a history lesson. And we're learning about the Second World War. The teacher, Mr. Hall, in his blazer as usual, tells us about the formation of the Berlin Wall. I've never heard of that. Mr. Hall, what's that? Mr. Hall is the sort of teacher who loves answering questions because he loves to tell stories. Well, Kieran, after the war, the Iron Curtain came down. Berlin was half Western, half Soviet, and people were able to move from side to side. They did so. The Soviets, troubled by this, built a wall around the western half of the city. They locked them in. Frost wrote Mending Wall, the poem at the beginning of this episode, in 1914, amid the First World War. By the time the Cold War and the building of the Berlin Wall began, both sides claimed the poem as their own. For the Americans, it was a wall-tearing poem. For the Soviets, it was an argument for the practicality of walls. Robert Frost even performed the poem in front of Khrushchev in Berlin in 1962. This was years before Reagan even compelled Gorbachev to tear down this wall. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offence. They locked them in. I can't seem to rationalise this in my head. And so after school, I rushed to my granddad's house. He lives in the suburbs of Nottingham in a place called Strelling. I go often. My granddad is sat at the other end of the room in a brown leather armchair that's older than me. I say hello, I give my granddad a hug, and we do the usual pleasantries. And I speak to my granddad. I ask him about the Berlin Wall. And he tells me pretty much the same thing that I learned at school. That he can remember it being built, and he can remember it falling down. So it's not there now. And he says no, but you can go and visit where it once stood. And it still feels weird. But it feels okay, because it's a thing of the past. It's a thing we've moved beyond, and I feel lucky to live in a time of peace and freedom.